Welcome to the Appetite for Discussion show with your host, Brendan Crouch. Tonight's show is brought to you in part by Hunk of Junk Hauling.
Woo! I love it. Thanks, everybody. That's a new intro song. Thank you, Ekluck Tom, for that. That's a 100% off the hip. Can you make me an intro song? Yeah, sure. Here you go. I'd also like to thank a couple show supporters. First, States Vegas Clothing Company for providing my apparel for this season. All season long. I wish LTOs was still here.
Hey, you and everybody else.
Hunk of Junk Calling. If you need any junk called, you can give them a call, 704-657-6778. And always States Vegas Radio for letting us do our show here. So now that all that good stuff. Oh, and by the way, there is a website, and I'll put the link to that and all the social media stuff for the show and all that good jazz. But at any rate, so guys, without further ado, tonight's guest is Mr. Adam James. Professional. Is it professional wrestler?
Yes, it's professional wrestler.
Yes. So anybody who is wrestling fans, they're going to enjoy this show tonight.
Well, I hope so.
Well, they should. And I think even if you're not a wrestling fan, and you're from around the area, I think, someone has some sort of memory of wrestling, or like their father, their grandfather watched wrestling growing up, even them as a kid. Girls may have watched, and even their brother and dad and stuff watched wrestling growing up as a kid. Is that true for you?
Yes. I still remember like it was yesterday. My first memory of wrestling actually hooked me on wrestling. I watched Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6.
That's a damn good way to start.
And I was hooked on it there, and never really realized I wanted to be a professional wrestler until the Monday Night Wars that everybody talks about was going on, and NWO had just came into WCW, and I watched Arn Anderson wrestle Sting on a Monday Nitro. And I remember I looked at my dad and I said, you know what, this is what I'm going to do.
Good for you.
I fell in love with Arn Anderson and just wanted to be him.
Arn Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a lot of folks, I'd imagine, are wrestlers who pick Arn Anderson. And maybe your generation, our generation, is like, that's the guy I want to be. More your, I don't want to say more mainstream, like everybody want to be Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior or something like that. But you picked a legend.
Yeah.
But off of the, I don't say the beaten path, but he's more of your, is it classic? Would that be a fair way to say? Or old school?
I'd say traditionalist.
Traditionalist, there you
go. More of the get in there and make it believable.
Right.
Everything that he does is going to mean something, and it's going to tell a story in some way. That's the whole idea behind professional wrestling, is to take the fans on a roller coaster ride. Make them feel like, I always tell people like the key to professional wrestling is going to watch a Fast and the Furious movie. They've got an hour and a half to make you suspend belief. To believe that that they're really jumping these cars through cities and blowing stuff up and walking away. A professional wrestler has about 8 minutes to do the same thing.
Is that the average match?
Yes, and normally.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not on TV. When you're on TV and you're a top guy, normally you'll get a little bit longer, 10 to 12, maybe sometimes 15 to 20. It depends on where you are on the card. Most indie things that I do, the indie scene, you have about 8 to 12 minutes. And in that 8 to 12 minutes, you've got to make people, suspend belief and believe what you're doing is telling a story in those 8 minutes. And there's a trick to it, and it's all about feeling the crowd and knowing what you're doing and what you're trying to tell them.
With so what's the name of, is there a, for lack of a better term, league or association that you're in?
Well, not really. Every company wants to put letters with it.
Absolutely.
There's 3 letters, there's 4 letters. Sometimes, you've got a word, but it all comes down to professional wrestling. It doesn't matter what the promoter wants to stamp it as.
Yeah.
It's professional wrestling anywhere you go.
So are you in an independent league?
Yes. I'm trying to get to that top level.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Major League Baseball. There's a handful of positions that are open every year, and there's 1.5 million guys trying to get there.
But I feel like here recently, now I used to be a huge wrestling fan growing up, and then when basically towards my end into high school and going into college, I drifted away from it.
I got to get you back.
I watched Royal Rumble last night in preparation for
Lord,
tonight.
that's not a good one to watch.
Well, you know what? I got emotionally invested. You know, it's still in there. Did you watch it, Joe? No. Well, I was trying not to wake up my mom because she was there on the couch. And I got so pissed that Seth Rollins won. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, really?
I think the problem, and I'm not going to bash a company that I'm hoping to work for one day.
Sure, I can.
Right.
I'm never going to work for him.
Right.
Don't even call, Vince. I'm not doing it.
You can call me Vince.
You call Adam.
I think wrestling nowadays is just too predictable.
Right.
When I was growing up, you know, it seemed like everybody was a top guy. Like, you know, we were talking about Hogan and Warrior earlier. I mean, even Rick Martel, you know, he was a mid-card guy, but he had a name. You know, if he went to another company, he could very easily be a top guy. At that time, when it was WWF, before, you know, they lost the lawsuit and couldn't use those three letters anymore, it seemed like everybody was a top guy. And when there was a Royal Rumble, you never knew who was going to win.
Right.
You had that unpredictability. Now, you know, going into the show, you're out of 30 guys, you can pretty much narrow it down to who it is that they're pushing for that spot. That's one thing that I like about the indie scene is nobody really knows. You know, you can kind of, a lot of people want to throw around the word shoot, you know, to where, you know, everybody, the gig's out, it's been out, you know, they know it's a scripted sport. You know, what we do does take a lot of athleticism.
Absolutely.
But there is a script to it. You know, a promoter will tell you who they want to win and lose. It's up to us what we do.
It's up to you to sell it.
To sell it. Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. You know, we've got to sell it to the fans and make them believe it. You know, we sell merchandise and gimmicks and stuff because of it. That's kind of gone away there because there's so many sponsors that they've got to push and they're trying to sell their merchandise that they've put money into and all of this. And, you know, this takes months, sometimes years of planning to know so they know what they have and what they're going to push at the time. So they've already got everything set up and they know the guy that they're going to go with. For some reason, it just seems like it gets shown on TV a lot sooner than what they're maybe hoping it to be.
You're right.
And I think that just has a lot to do with the writers now are our age and they weren't necessarily wrestling fans growing up.
Right. I'm just saying, there's no way that Braun Strowman wasn't winning last night. I was so upset. You know, he's a local guy, so obviously...
Adam was actually a really good friend of mine.
Get out of here.
I don't know the chances of him hearing this and before I talk to him is probably slim to none.
Well, you're going to send it to him. You're going to go, hey, you need to go on that show.
Yeah, and I will, but I'm probably going to text him before and be like, hey, I wasn't trying to bury you. Adam was never a wrestling fan.
Really?
He never cared about wrestling. Me and my boss, my full-time job, actually lifted with him at a gym.
Yeah.
And first day I met him, you know, at this gym when we got done, we would go up to the counter and they would make you a protein shake as a thank you. You know, you went out the door. I remember me and my boss were standing up there and we're both pretty good-sized guys, I think. And anyway, I'm ordering my protein shake and the light just disappeared. I mean, there was just nothing behind me. I turned around like, you know, what the hell is this? And I turned around and it's him. And I was like, I'll get out of your way. You know,
I'm moving. Sorry, I'm in your way, sir.
If you want to hide a barn, put Adam in front of it. But, I mean, he's a super nice guy. Never cared about wrestling. I talked to him about wrestling, told him what I was doing. He's like, you know, that's fake shit. I don't want to do it. You know, I don't have nothing to do with it. He was a strongman competitor.
Right.
You know, and he wanted to be a world champion in strongman.
And he won.
Yep.
He won the Arnold Classic, I think.
He met Paul Levesque at one, which is Triple H. And he was like, hey, you know, I can make you a millionaire. And, you know, the rest, as they say, is
history.
Yeah.
He went to high school with my brother-in-law, the Bandies.
Yeah.
And that's, I haven't met him or anything like that. And I think Jason, the group of their guys, really good guys, they still run around together. When he comes into town, they hang out and stuff like that.
Right.
But, I was pulling for him last night. I was so pissed. I was like, there's no way they're going to let him win.
And you can't meet a nicer guy in the world. You
That's
know?
what
I mean, real life. I mean, Adam is the sweetest person you ever meet. He's very humble, down to earth. Just don't take pictures of him while he's lifting. I watched him scare the crap out of a guy. Because up there at the gym, you know, everybody was talking about, well, there's a strongman competitor here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So people would come up there and they pay for a day to go into the gym and lift, and all they wanted to do was just see Adam.
Right.
And so he was squatting one day, and the guy was taking pictures, and That lasted for all about 5 minutes.
And he had enough.
Oh, yeah.
I know what it's like, because I know when I go, places, people take a lot of pictures and stuff, so it can get annoying.
Oh, yeah.
No, I never have that shit happen. No one's ever going to mistake me for it. Well, anyone.
Yeah. Well, I do remember being at the gym about 2 weeks ago, and somebody came up to me and was like, "Aren't you Adam?" And it kind of shocked me, because I thought I had a fan, and then it turned out to be you. But
you have a fan. Well, I'd seen a picture of you, and I was there working out. And I was like, "Damn, that looks like him." He was at plant. Yeah, and I was like, "That's gotta be him."
Can we beep that going forward?
Yeah, I don't like to tell people I work out.
Hey, I'm on the indies. I'm not making $1 million a year, so I got to get in where
I'm
I
at
can
Planet Fitness. If anyone wants to come up and ask me the questions or take pictures, feel free. I'm the tall guy in the corner. Can't miss me. But at any rate, so I was invested in it, man. But the one thing I noticed last night, though, that me as now I'm going to call myself a newer novice fan before I was a real fan. Some of the guys who are coming in, I was like, "There's no way."
Right.
There's no way these guys are going to win. And the acts were just kind of. I mean, I get it; it's entertaining, and I was entertained. I don't know. There's a couple of them dudes I was on there. I was like, "What is this?"
Well, the thing, I don't know, with you saying that you haven't really been invested in it in a long time. There's it's a promotion in WWE, but it's kind of like their I don't know what you would call it exactly. It's kind of like before you get called up to the big show, kind of like the minors, and it's NXT.
Yep.
And there's a lot of guys there that it's like what they're doing there, they can never do on mainstream and on Mondays and Tuesday nights, because they have to change their work ethic so much and slow down so much to tell that story in that amount of time, and it's kind of like more gimmicks in a way instead of the actual wrestling
in NXT.
Yes,
gotcha.
and even on the indies, the way we wrestle on the indies is different than the WWE way. A lot of people say, "Well, you'll get taught to wrestle the WWE way," and there's a lot of guys that would be what they call internet darlings, on the indies or whatever. People are just ranting and raving, "Hey, I can't wait to see them go to the show." They go to the show and they can't wrestle that way anymore. And so they lose that drawing power.
I see. Okay.
Like, a simple thing like the pile driver is a maneuver where, you put the guy's head between your legs, you put the body up and you drop down on your ass. And, it's supposed to crank their neck. Whoa. WWE's outlawed that. You can't use it at all. And there's guys.
I didn't know that, but I've been wondering as I've been, getting back. It's like no one's doing that anymore.
Well, it's because of the head trauma, and all of the concussions and everything. That's their safety regulation to get that away. But then you watch it, and you got Seth Rollins doing a curb stomp. Well, what's the difference? You're still driving the guy's head into the mat theoretically. So I mean, it's a contact sport. Any way you look at it, accidents are going to happen. There's no way to get away from it. But I do agree with the safety goals that they have.
Sure.
To where they're trying to get away from it. But when you take guys' moves away and their work ethic away and you change it, you're going to lose a lot of the fans that they had before.
One thing that maybe I haven't given enough opportunity to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway just for our discussion. One thing that I miss, or I don't think they do as much of, and maybe I'm wrong, is that the interviews. You remember back in the good old days?
There's so many of them now.
But do they still do the interviews?
Yeah, so 90% of every show is them talking on a mic.
Maybe I'm catching them when they're just wrestling, and I'm like.
Oh, that's one reason. Again, I love the indies is because there's a lot less talking. They want people in the ring, doing stuff. Because if you get a crowd that's the way I teach guys that are coming in, I've kind of been doing it long enough now to where I'm starting to train guys when they come in or try to give them a helping hand. The way I look at it is if a family's coming out to an indie show, they can't afford to go to a WWE show on a Monday night or Tuesday night or even go to a pay-per-view, because you're looking at probably spending $150, $300. If you go by yourself, you can probably get out for around $150, $200. You're taking your family, you're probably looking at $300 to $400. So
it's almost like taking your kids to a Major League Baseball game.
I mean, you got to pay for
for
the fuel, the room. Most likely, if it's in another state, then you got to pay for the tickets and the food and everything. I mean, easily you could drop $500 or a little bit less into going to a live event.
Damn.
So when they come to the indies, most times it's $8 to $10 a ticket. So when they come to the indies, the whole idea is you don't want to show them what they do on a Monday or a Tuesday night because they can sit at home and watch that for free, theoretically, because,
Right.
you know, they're paying their cable to watch everything else. So they can watch it for free. The only way you get them to come back is do what's different than what they see on Monday and Tuesday nights. And what's different is less talking on a microphone and more wrestling in the ring. And things that they can't see. You know, that's where we still use power drivers and power bombs and, you know, the bigger, flashier moves.
Right.
I don't technically do those because, you know, I have to go to work on Monday.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, about your injury. I guess back to WWE, I guess I've been catching them when they're wrestling and not interviewing. But I just think the old school guys, maybe they were just better at it.
Yeah, they were. There was more charisma in it.
Yes.
And it was less scripted.
Right. It was more off the hip.
Yeah, now, I mean, I've got friends that are there, and they've told me several times, you know, they'll come in on show day, you know, their call time's at 12 o'clock. They start doing their interviews, you know, because it's pre-recorded, and they work it into the show where they can. And it's word for word what they want them to say.
I'll be damned.
And, I mean, to me, me and you were talking, and I can tell this is like the first long conversation that me and you've had, and I can tell you're being real with me. You know, everything you're saying, you're laid back, you're relaxed. You can tell that when you're watching somebody on a camera too. You know, if they're force fed what to say, that comes out. You know, that I'm not getting a real person here. Mm-hmm. I think all of that ended with Steve Austin. When Steve Austin got to the height of his career, you know, they would give him a script to be like, I ain't reading this bullshit. I'm going to be me. Nobody else has the balls to do that.
Right.
You know, but he was the biggest money maker and biggest draw in wrestling. I mean, since Hulk Hogan.
And he could do it.
Right.
He could get away with it.
And see, Hogan was never a talker.
No.
Steve Austin could talk you into any seat in any arena in the world, you know?
But that's something I think may be missing, right? If you had that guy come back.
The passion. If you would let people speak. I mean, most of WWE stuff now is on the network anyway, except on Monday and Tuesday nights. My biggest thing, if I was a writer for WWE, the biggest thing that I would change is if it's on the network and it's only going to be seen on the network, the hell with the scripts. Let them be them.
That's fair. It's a good idea.
You know,
well, you know what? They may have to get away from that, right? I mean, they may have to start being a bit more creative because they've kind of had a monopoly over this.
Yes, and now wrestling goes on swings.
Yeah.
You know, there's an upswing, there's a downswing. The business was actually hurting in a lot of ways after WCW closed. When Vince won the Monday Night Wars and WCW closed and all that, you always make money when you have a challenger. If you have a competitor that, you know, the Monday Night Wars, the big thing was the ratings.
Right.
Average fans would just want to jump in and talking about ratings, but they never understood it. And how could you? If you're not in the business of production and TV time and all this stuff, you're not going to understand it. You're just trying to be a mark and trying to be smart about it. But everybody wanted to talk about ratings. Well, the ratings were good because you're beating your competitor. When the competitor goes away, then what do you have to strive for?
Right.
You know, number one can only enjoy number one if there's a number two chasing.
Sure.
But now you've got ROH that's coming up. Cody Rhodes just started AEW.
Yes.
So that's coming up. New Japan is starting to make a bigger name for themselves. So, I mean, you've got competitors. Nobody's ever going to take the number one spot from Vince McMahon. I mean, he just signed a $9 million contract. I believe it was with Fox.
9 million
or billion? I think it was $9 billion. Okay. You're never going to touch his production values. But you don't ever have to really compete for that number one spot. Just give people another option to watch.
I think this is AEW, right?
Yes.
I think they're going to give them a run for their money.
They may. Cody's smart. I mean, you know, he's third generation and he's from the Rhodes family. So I mean, Dusty was the I mean, he was the best booker in wrestling. I mean, anybody that you talk to that was from that area was like, you know, Dusty was the man.
He was the American Dwayne, baby.
Oh, yeah. I would try and do an impersonation, but I would just butcher it.
It's all right.
Some people can do it and some people can't.
But I think there's going to be the guys who are maybe in the bigger stars in the independent leagues or, you know, the internet famous guys. Maybe they'll get a chance over there with those guys.
Well, I mean, they've got drawing power now. You've got Cody Rhodes, you've got the Young Bucks, and then you got Chris Jericho. So, I mean, you've got the top names in the business that are willing to go in and try it.
Do you think there'll be some other names, the guys who are contracts going to end with WWE, who they know they've kind of hit their ceiling and are not going to be?
And that's just it. It's hard to explain this other than the way I look at it. If you got 50 guys on your roster and you've got 2 heavyweight championships, not everybody can be the top guy, you know, and everybody's like, well, it's their turn or it's this or it's that. Who's to say it's anybody's turn? You know, a belt is just I'm not going to say it's just, me personally, if a promotion were to put a championship on me, I take that as they're putting their faith in me. Right. Because they're expecting me to put asses in seats. Yep. You know, so it's my job to make that company better. If they make me a champion and we lose customers, then I feel like I'm letting that company down. And I take that hard. Sure. But if I'm pulling customers in, then I'm taking it as, hey, I'm doing my part. I'm doing what they're expecting me to do. But it's just a prop. You know, the belt is a prop. And a lot of guys now, I listen to a podcast daily. It's Bruce Pritchard and Conrad Thompson. They do the Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard. Okay. And Bruce is always big on talking about, well, he didn't need the title or this person did need the title. The way I was trained when I came into the business is the wrestler makes the championship. It should never be the other way around. Right. Good point. Because if I'm holding that title and that title means nothing, then why are you going to come watch the show? Right. But if I'm the champion and by having that championship, I make you want to come in, then that belt means something. You know, because if I'm a bad guy, at the end of the match, I want you to believe that the person I wrestled almost beat me. Yeah, of course. And if I'm the baby face, I want you to think I just about had him. Gotcha. Because that's where your drawing power is to chase. Absolutely. You know, everybody, like Vince, I don't see how he did it. Honestly, that shows how little I understand about wrestling still. I've been in the business for 10 years, and I still know very little when you think about it. Because in every other promotion in the world, the heel was normally your champion and the baby chased them. Yep. You know, because fans would want to pay the money to see the heel get their ass kicked. Absolutely. Finally, you know, but with Vince, he always wanted his baby on top. Hogan was the drawing power, and he was a baby. To me, I can't start a promotion up and make that work. But I guess in New York, it was just different at the time.
Well, and maybe it was the character, right? Right. I mean, he was, take your vitamins. He was, big inspiration to the kids, the American flag, Hulkamania. He was a bigger than life dude.
And I still believe all that. You know, the stuff that came out a couple years ago when, the video surfaced and he was saying stuff that, he shouldn't have been saying. Granted, I agree. He took his punishment, he ate it, he accepted it, and he moved on. Right. There isn't a person in this world that hasn't said something behind closed doors they regret, Right. I mean, everybody looks at wrestlers as larger than life. They shouldn't make mistakes and all that. People make mistakes.
I got a question about, you were talking about earlier about wrestlers jumping ship to different league. Yeah, I read or saw a show where Vince McMahon would actually making these guys sign over their characters, so they couldn't actually.
Well, he has ownership
their name to go to another if they went to another league, and that's why there wasn't much competition for years, was because he owned all their names.
And he actually trademarks them. When he comes up with a name, he'll get the trademark for it to where you can't leave with it.
So you couldn't be under WWE contract and then go wrestle for AEW and be Adam James.
But there was some exceptions.
You have to be something
because Hulk Hogan did. He went to the other league, didn't he?
He went to the WCW.
Yes,
as Hulk Hogan.
Right, but I think that was before the trademark days. Is the only way I can explain that. I think when that happened, I think Vince was like, "Hey, I'm not going to get burnt with that again."
Right. Well, it's a smart move, a business move.
But see, just a little under a year later. The same thing happened with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash when they went, because they were Diesel and Razor Ramon. When they appeared in WCW, they were trying to figure out a way around that, and they just called them the outsiders and made them think that they were going to say their names. And then eventually Vince won that out, and they had to use their real names. You were asking about if I were to use Adam James. I can tell you Vince probably isn't going to see much drawing power in that, and he'll give me a name.
But if you were, if you were the champ or something.
If he liked the Adam James name, I'm sure he'd get a trademark on it, and I wouldn't ever be able to use it somewhere else if I left.
Where did you come up with the name Adam James? What's the story behind that? Because that is not his real name, and we're not telling you.
Adam is actually my middle name.
Okay.
And when I was training, my favorite wrestler at the time was James Storm. And so I took Adam and I put James with it and went with it.
Went with
And
it.
the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, my favorite tag team at the time was Beer Money. It was Bobby Roode and James Storm when they were in TNA.
Okay, TNA, yeah.
Right. And that's the company I've actually gotten to work for. I worked as an extra for them. I was in a video vignette with Lady Tappa when she came in. It was Barbarian's niece, which was shown on Impact, and I did 2 dark matches with them.
So you got to get inside the squared circle and lock up.
I did.
Damn, you got to. Can you find it on YouTube or anywhere?
They're actually out there on YouTube. I had a match with AJ Styles, and I had a match with Jeff Jarrett.
Shut up. What was that like?
Jeff Jarrett was fun. He got mad at me because I kept calling for the guitar shot, and he didn't want to give it to me. And
Give me the guitar!
Yeah, I wound up making him do it because he did a spot, or I shot him into the corner, told him to move. Yeah. And I ate the corner, rolled out of the ring, grabbed the guitar, acted like I was going to hit him with it, sat it on the apron. And once it's made contact with the ring, you got to use it.
You got to use it.
Yeah. And, I grew up with watching him, hitting people with the guitar. I was like, there's not a chance in hell I'm leaving here.
Who did you wrestle as for
Adam James.
Adam James. They didn't put the mask on you and call you some cheesy.
No. Jeff actually liked me and had talked to me about possibly doing something with me at a later date. Yeah. The only problem was at the time I'd only been in the business for 3 years. And so they wanted me to get more ring time under me, get them a little more experience, and go from there. And at the time, I wasn't really taking the gym that serious. And he wanted me to cut some weight and bulk up a little bit. Yeah. And when I finally felt like I was ready, TNA was on a downswing. And that's never really pursued it anymore after that. And not saying I would have made it, but
I mean, hey, you got to wrestle with 2 big name. I mean, Jared, he's in the Hall of Fame, right?
Yes. And he was in the Rumble last night, which I was happy to see him do that spot there. And then AJ Styles, funny story. My now wife, my current wife, her dad trained AJ Styles when he first started out.
Is he where is he from?
Georgia.
Is he from Georgia?
Yeah. And he originally started training in Cornelia, Georgia, at NWA Anarchy.
I'll be damned. Yeah. So your wife is. Obviously, she supports.
And she grew up in the business. Her dad was a wrestler, her whole life, and so she
got lucky.
Yeah, no, right.
Yeah,
and I'm married way out of my league. If you saw a picture of her, you'd understand. But she's beautiful, and I don't know how I got her, but I'm not letting her go.
Because you're Adam fucking James. That's why.
Well, I could say that, but then she would just laugh. But
of course, what's your finishing move?
Well, it varies. If I'm a bad guy, it's anything that's cheats to win. Okay. If I'm a babyface, I normally use a spine buster because of Arn Anderson.
Okay. Now, which do you prefer to play? Which is your favorite?
I actually prefer baby.
Really?
Which is weird, but really, if you think about it, it's not because I sell more merchandise as a baby. And as a heel, if I'm a heel at a show, I will not try and sell anything. I was just raised in the business that if you're a heel, you don't try to sell gimmicks. There's a lot of guys that do because, they have to put food on their table, and I understand that. Yeah, sure. I'm not one of those people who was like, well, back in the day, they didn't do this, so you shouldn't. Teach their own. You know, everybody's trying to put food on their table. So.
Is it hard to get into character or easy to get into character?
Well, my character is just me turned up.
Okay.
As a baby or a heel, I'm an arrogant smartass. Oh. So, it's just when I walk through that curtain, I can't explain it. From day one, it was that way. I grew up in the business and around the business. I always had friends and stuff that somehow were associated with it somehow. Either they watched it or they were doing it in their backyard or they knew somebody or a family member was even a wrestler. I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, and that was a hotbed for indie wrestling. And so, me and my buddies would, even when we moved to Gaylords, Virginia, we would wrestle in our backyards and stuff. I remember my mom coming home when I was 11. I was up on the roof. Oh, yeah. Getting ready to jump off. And she yelled at me, what the hell are you doing?
On the roof of the house?
Yeah.
At 11?
Yeah. And I yelled at her. I was like, I'm the new Mick Foley. That wasn't the right answer. But, just always been around wrestling. Always wanted to do it. And, it just took off from there. But.
Damn. So you've been doing it 10 years?
Yeah. No, professionally, I've been doing it for 10 years.
And do you think you'll continue? Obviously, the goal is to make it to the top.
Well, I've got aspirations to make it there. Yeah. I do not want to sign a contract with anybody. Okay. My goal right now, I'm 32. I'm not ashamed to say that. I've had a good life. and can plan on continuing to have a good life. And I also want to be able to walk and play with my grandkids.
Sure.
It takes a big toll on your body. I'm shooting for 35, and if I don't make it by then, I'll be fine with walking away and just helping younger guys.
Sure.
What I want right now is to be on the network. I would love to do a Raw, have a match on Raw or SmackDown or something like that, to where when I'm 50, I can look back at the network and it's on there and nobody can ever take that from me. I don't care what the name is.
Right.
But to me, it doesn't matter where I am. When I walk through the curtain, for some reason, a switch just it gets flipped, and I can't explain it. I just love being out there in front of a crowd.
So, do you have an intro song that you come into?
I do, but I don't own the copyright.
Gotcha.
So, which is another thing you can get away with on the indies, because a lot of stuff. I mean, it gets on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But I really don't see Godsmack or Metallica or anything like that really paying attention to it, because, an entrance normally lasts a minute.
Yeah.
And technically, we're paying for it on our iPhones. So when you're coming out, it really is the same thing as being at the gym and your speakers turned up too loud.
It is, but I've had 2 episodes here get popped off of YouTube because of the intro song copyright.
And the whole thing with that is they're afraid you're making money off of it, and they're not getting a cut.
I'm not making a penny.
Right.
Now, I'm doing this just for fun, shits and giggles, to learn about people. I've interviewed all different types of people. I've been doing this for like 6 months or whatever, and I've had a good time. I've learned a lot. It's fun. People seem to be enjoying it. But no, I don't make any money off of it.
Well, see, in wrestling, that came to backfire a promoter, Paul Heyman, when he was running ECW. Yeah. I don't know if you remember that or not, but he had a character in there named Sandman. Yes. And obviously he came out the Enter Sandman with Metallica. Got away with it for years. Finally, their first pay-per-view, they got busted. And
Lars was like,
Yeah, and when he found out about it, they went after him with everything they had. And
they
got the cease and desist order and everything. And well, Paul Heyman wanted everybody to believe he had deep pockets, but he didn't. And, his parents couldn't keep bailing him out. But
so now, for you, do you make money? Like, do you get money at the end of your show?
I do. Obviously, it's the indie, so there's not contracts. So sometimes you get stiffed. A promoter will tell you that they're going to pay you a certain amount, and either it'll be less than that or you won't get paid at all. And you really don't have a leg to stand on it.
Do you give them a spine buster? Because I think you would be called for.
A true bat story.
That's a lot of big dudes, man. Dude. You better get in the car and get out of town.
I'll tell you 2 true bat stories. One, I wasn't involved in, but a promoter locally up in Nashville was running a show, and he had a lot of big names on it. And one of the names was Tommy Dreamer. Mm-hmm. And the promoter had himself booked in the main event. And he was wrestling Tommy Dreamer. I think it was a tag match. There was a bunch of guys in there. He basically told all the guys they didn't draw good enough at the door to cover their pay for the night. And the story is Tommy sat down next to him, all calm, cool, and collected, and told him, he said, you got 2 choices. You can take yourself out of this main event, or your choice number 2 is you're not walking out of this building. And needless to say, within 10 minutes, he had Tommy Dreamer's money.
That's exactly right.
And another one with me, I did a show down in the Charlotte area. I'm not going to say the city because everybody will know exactly who it is. But did a show down towards Charlotte. The promoter told me he didn't have my money. I took one of the ring posts with me when I left.
I like it.
Yeah, still have it in my building.
Good for you.
He's contacted me a couple times wanting it back, and I tell him I'm still waiting for the check to come in the mail.
Hey, I like it. You don't took the ring post? Damn, that's good.
Well, it's going to be hard for him to ever set that ring up again.
That's a good point.
But, for the most part, promoters are good. Normally you get more promoters and more bookings around tax time every year. Because, guys will be like, oh, this wrestling stuff's easy. I'm going to book a show. Those are the guys we normally look for, because by, they get their tax check in April. By June, they're done. But, get in there and make your money while you can.
Right. Well, speaking of events, there's going to be a wrestling event this weekend, right?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The I-40 flea market over here in Statesville has nicely donated a portion of their parking lot for us to do an event. NAWA will be holding our first Statesville event, and it's in honor of my mom. She has, I cannot pronounce the cancer, but it's in her blood. Okay. Basically, what it is her white blood cells will get too high, and she has to do chemo to bring it back down because the white blood cells will actually kill off her red blood cells, and the red blood cells is what keeps infections and stuff out, from entering your body. So basically, when her white blood cells are too high, a common cold can kill her.
Right.
And so she has to do the chemo to bring it down. Well, this last round of chemo, which was her fourth in the past 7 years, she can't even go into remediation. And it's just something she's always going to deal with for the rest of her life. It ate a hole in her stomach and a hole in her colon, and she had to have 90% of her colon removed. And she spent nearly 2 weeks on life support. And obviously, with her being in the hospital and not being able to work, and my dad having to be with her and not being able to work, the bills are going to mount up.
Yeah, they start adding up.
And so the promotion that I work for told me, hey, we'll give you the ring, book a show, and all the proceeds will go to that. And automatically reached out to see if we could find a place. And Julius was nice enough to say, hey, what can we do to help? And donated us a portion of the parking lot to do a show. It's a free show. All we're doing is asking for donations.
Okay.
$1 goes a long way. We're doing a show in a parking lot. If we get 2,000 people there and everybody donates $1, hey, that's $2,000 worth of help.
I hope to, like hell, you get 2,000 people in. That'd be fantastic.
We're also doing, we're going to be doing a silent auction on some wrestling memorabilia. Most stuff's going to be, $1, $5, the starting bid. If I put $5 on something and you offer $5.25, if you got the highest bid, it's yours.
Okay.
We're also going to be doing a 50-50 drawing. We're going to do that a little bit different. Everybody's used to $1 for a raffle ticket. It's going to be a 50 cent a raffle ticket. So if you've got $1 to spare, you get 2 tickets.
Perfect.
The way we're going to break that down is the winner gets half the money in the jar. The other half the money goes to my mom.
Perfect.
And, meet and greet with all the wrestlers. If you, I'll say it here, I can't give their names. There's supposed to be 3 WWE guys that are going to be here Saturday signing pictures.
Okay.
And all the pictures that they sell, all the money's being donated to my mom.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And so I can't give their names on the radio because if Vince were to hear it, he might not like that.
Right. But, if Vince McMahon is ever listening to Appetite for Discussion,
you'd be surprised how often stuff can make it back.
Yeah, does he have the State's Vegas radio app? Maybe.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know who could hear what and when. But
well, I mean, if they show up, that's fantastic. But even if the money that they may be here to support is nice, because wrestling, at the end of the day, right, regardless of the relationships in the ring and in different leagues, it's a brotherhood.
Yes,
True?
Yeah, it is. And what touched me was I put a post out about what was going on with my mom, and the guy that trained me. He trained me as far as he could in wrestling.
Yeah.
And his name's Chad Bird. Did an awesome job. Taught me how to do the moves, do them safely. He was trained by George South. He went through some troubling times in his life, and we kind of separated there for a little bit. He had some issues that he had to handle.
Sure.
And I didn't want to stop wrestling. So I kept going around, and I met a guy that used to wrestle in Impact. His name was Gunner. He wrestles for WWE now as Jackson Riker.
Okay.
And him and his trainer, his name was Abel Adams. They saw me at an indie show, took a liking to me. They said, "Come on, kid, we're going to teach you how to work."
That's cool.
And so I put a post up on Facebook talking about my mom, and within 5 minutes, I had a email or one of the messages on Facebook from Gunner asking me, "Hey, man, what can I do to help?" And he's at that level, and he still hasn't ever forgot where he came from.
That's good.
Right.
It's a good story.
It's rare to hear.
Absolutely.
A lot of guys, when they get that money or they get to that point where they want it, it's like, the hell with everybody else. I got to where I want to be.
Well, and so maybe sometimes depending on what their character is too, maybe they start living the persona. Like Ric Flair could never turn it off.
Right.
And I would say even today,
damn near killed him too.
It damn near killed him too. What a great documentary that was.
That's a success story. No, Rick has definitely turned into a success story.
Have you watched the Resurrection of Jake the Snake?
I have. And I absolutely love it. I love Jake. Believe it or not, if you were to watch one of my promos, I like to believe that people automatically think of Jake because that resonated with me. When I was going through training, that was one of the parts is you had to learn how to do promos.
Right.
And I loved Jake because, all the time that I was growing up, bad guys were always yelling and screaming and, telling you how I'm gonna whoop your ass Saturday and this is how I'm gonna do it.
That's right.
Jake never had to yell.
No, he didn't.
He just talked, and the way he would talk, that monotone voice,
Yes.
and he'd get deep and everything, and just tell you why he was better than you were.
Damn.
And you know,
it chills already.
yeah, it just resonated with me, and it was like, I don't have to yell and scream. You know, I'm just gonna tell you, hey, you might be good, but I'm better. You know, so.
Now do you have a title shot coming up?
I do.
In 2 weeks or something?
Yes, February 9th in Lenore. I'm wrestling for the NAWA Heavyweight Championship. And if I win that, that'll be the second time that I've actually held that promotions championship.
And there's a belt, like a legitimate belt?
Yes, it's a new belt. The original belt that NAWA was using was the old NWA TV title. And so
it was that belt.
And no, everybody called me a mark for it because I wanted to hold that belt so much, mainly to get the promo pictures. But my whole thing is Harley Race held that belt, Ric Flair held that belt.
Yes, that's
Ricky,
an iconic
Ricky
belt.
Steamboat held that belt. It's like, yes, I'll win that championship. Thank you.
Yeah,
you know. So
I mean,
like and rings. You know, I've always been into the history of wrestling. Mm-hmm. You know, if I go to a promotion, and I just like hearing about the ring, where it came from, who's been in it. You know,
rolling around on the same Madison legends.
Right. And I had been in the business for a year and a half, and I went to my first, it's like a training, and, you know, where they'll teach you what they know, or they'll try to pass it on. Most of them, a lot of times it's like, hey, give us $25, we'll run this seminar, we're going to take your money and leave. But we did one, it was at the Coast, and Harley Race was the guy coming in. It was an NWA show, and you know Harley Race has always been big with NWA. I mean, he was the real world's champion. Mm-hmm. So when I had Harley Race on the poster, I was like, hell yeah, I'm paying $50 and going down there. And there was 50 guys there, and he was going to choose 2 for the show that night. And me and another guy got chose for the show. And I'd only been in the business for a year. And with the show, we also got to go out and train with them in Chicago, which was amazing. You know. And, you know, going through and having Harley Race as one of your trainers, you know, that's something that you can put on your resume.
Absolutely.
And I've actually trained with Arn Anderson, which was, you know, I couldn't ask for more. You know, actually getting in the ring with Arn and taking his punch and his DDT, you know, it's lifelong things. You know, if I never signed with WWE, I'm fine with that. Because I've gotten to do stuff in wrestling that other people wish they could do.
Absolutely.
You know, I've gone to Africa and wrestled. You know, I've wrestled for TNA. You know, it's things that other people couldn't imagine doing.
You know, there's a lot of things I thought you would say tonight, but you wrestling in Africa wasn't one of them.
Yep. And
you did wrestle a human being, right?
Yes.
Lions or giraffe.
Yes, I actually wrestled Bobby Lashley and Salem Center 6 in Africa. And Bobby Lashley had just been released from WWE a few months before, and Chris Masters had as well. And they were both on the tour. And Domino, that used to be part of Deuce and Domino, was a tag team. We all went over. But mainly it was thank you to me when I did that video package with Lady Tappa for TNA. Barbarian wrestled for NAWA with us a lot when Chad was running the promotion. And he was like, hey, I like that kid. You know, what's his booking fee?
Yeah.
And Chad was like, I don't know, reach out to him. And so he had his manager reach out to me on Facebook and said, how much would it take for you to go with us to Africa? Like, brother, I'm already on the plane. You know, I don't need money, but
if you're waiting on me, you're backing up.
Yeah, the pay was good, and it was right before Christmas. So I mean, for 10 days, I made $3,000. So you know, I'm not afraid to say it. You know, that's the easiest $3,000 I ever made. But it was also a humbling experience. You know, a lot of guys wanted to go over there and put another check on a place they had been to wrestle. To me, it was humbling just seeing how people in Africa live so much different than we do. You know, here you constantly, if you get on social media, people are complaining about everything.
Absolutely.
You know, my car wouldn't start this morning, you know, F my life.
Right. I hate that saying, fuck my life.
Yeah.
People have no clue how lucky we have it here. Even in the some real shitty, and don't get me wrong, there are some people here who have it awful.
Yeah. Right? Our first day there at the airport, we were met by the military and the police. And in Africa, the humbling experience to me is the police there, they have no respect for the police because the police are mean to them. You know, if they want them to move, they'll beat them with a club, you know, and broad daylight. I mean, you can see them. There's no rules or anything there. But the military, they will listen and they respect the military because they look at the military as going and fighting for them. You know, they're putting their lives on the line to try and make their place better. Well, we leave from the airport to go to the resort that we're staying at, and the resort is absolutely beautiful. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better place to stay. But getting there, we drove through hell. I mean, there's shanties. I call them shanties, but basically, it's like a yard sale that's set up. And I looked at the driver and I said, "When do these people normally close up? When do they go home?" And he looked at me kind of strange, and I didn't mean to, step out of line or anything. He said, "That's where they live."
Oh.
Where they set up this, everything they own is on that table that they're trying to sell to make $5 to buy something else that they might need. And that's a humbling experience. I mean, they don't have a roof, they don't have running water, they don't. The water there, obviously, you can't drink. We've all heard the stories.
Yeah, people today are pissed
they don't have
they can't
power.
get Wi-Fi.
Yeah, they have 2 radio towers there. I remember the first cell phone I ever had here, and I was embarrassed of it. It was one of those brick phones where you had to flip it down and you couldn't get reception unless you pulled the little antenna up. They were just getting those.
Damn.
4 years ago, and they only had 2 radio towers. And I'm walking around with my iPhone, wondering when I'm going to get Wi-Fi.
Right.
I mean, it's a humbling experience.
We're such dicks.
And they wanted us to play football, and so.
But soccer.
Well, that's what I found out. I go over there, I'm a complete idiot. I don't know. They're like football. I'm like, hell yeah. I probably look like an NFL player.
Yeah.
So we go out there and everything. They got a soccer ball. Like, I don't know how to play soccer, and none of us did.
Right.
So we taught them how to play kickball.
Okay.
And there's a lot of kids and stuff running around out there. They're in their underwear and stuff because I mean they don't have like play clothes, school clothes, anything. They're running around in underwear, and everybody's dirty, but they don't stink, and everybody's like, oh, well, it's a nasty place. They actually try to keep it somewhat clean and presentable. But this one kid came up to me, and I wasn't thinking anything of it. I pulled a pack of gum out of my pocket, put a piece of gum in. And I saw he was looking at me, so I gave him a piece of gum. He didn't even know how to open it. He didn't know what to do with it. I'd never seen it. The boy's probably 11 years old.
Bless his heart.
And little things like that, I was like, that's what you should really take away from this. If you're not humbled by that, then you can't be humbled.
Damn, that's a good point. But it's also, I think it says a lot about you too to go over there and all of this stuff is happening. But you're absorbing what that is. You're seeing that and realizing how fortunate you are in the awful situation that these people are in. That something as simple as opening up a stick of gum is something taken for granted. A life-changing experience. Yeah.
And the little boy I've never seen that before because his parents can't afford it.
No.
And that was another thing. The promoter over there. They're paying us good money to come over. Because to them, we're WWE guys. Even if we're not there at WWE, that's what they're looking at us like.
Sure.
And it was funny, when I got off the plane and I was walking to the airport, a guy asked me if I was Randy Orton. I was like, hell yeah, I'm Randy Orton. But
who I've actually seen in an airport, and he is a big dude.
Yeah, I'm not even going to lie. I signed the name Randy. I just didn't put Orton on the end of it because I don't want to go to jail. But anyway, we're walking through the airport and just how everything's culturally different. Here you got to go through TSA and you got to get everything checked and stuff. There, they don't care, because what are they going to do? Arrest you? I mean, there's no jails. But the promoter's paying good money for us to come over there, and then they're charging so much.
I was going to say, how are they even charging?
Well, we get to the promotion. I mean, this dirt roads with potholes the size of this room that we're in, that you're driving through. People are hitting each other and just cussing each other and going on because there's no insurance or anything, Old beat up cars that they want to get out of the United States, they ship down there and are over there, I should say. And but we get to the place that we're doing the show, and I'm talking about, it's a black collar event. They've got tables set up, wine glasses, goblet wine glasses, and they're, meals for them would be $50 our money that they're wanting to pay for a plate after they pay to get into the event. They're charging $300 American money for people to get in. And the promoter got upset that we only drew like 60 people. You're in Africa.
Yeah.
Who has that kind of money?
Who sold him the bill of goods? You could go over there and, sell out hundreds of seats for $300.
Yeah. So needless to say, that was the one and only trip that we got to make over there because, the promoter lost his ass. Yeah.
Damn.
But you get that here too.
Sure.
Promoters are like, "Oh, I'm gonna book this card," and they'll put top names on it, and then they get 50 people drawn out to it because the whole thing is, why should they come? You know, if they could just get on the network for $9.99 a month and watch what they did when they were in ECW or WCW or WWF, why are they going to come to the indie show and see them work with somebody that they don't know?
Speaking of working at the indie show, I want to go back a second because you guys have to be careful with injuries, so you have to protect one another because you guys work a full-time job as a livelihood to support yourselves and your family. Are there certain safety precautions that you guys take? Because I know you're trying to sell it, and there's different things you can do that the WWE can't do.
Right.
But are there really?
You have a safe word, and
you do.
It's no.
We have a safe word here too. It's pineapple.
For us, it's no. There's a bunch of times I'll be in the back, and we'll be planning out the match on what we're gonna do or what story we're gonna tell, and they'll be like, "Hey, I'm gonna hit you with like a 450 spinning thing off the top rope and pile driver you." I'm like, no. For one, it's not going to make sense when you're 100 pounds less than me and a foot shorter than I am. That's not going to make sense.
Right.
And two, I'm not going to break my neck in an indie show where I'm making $40.
Right. And number three, I don't even know what you said.
Right.
You just made that shit up.
Yeah. So my thing is, I want it to be believable. You know, like a lot of times promoters will put me in the ring with guys that are smaller than me, and they'll be doing all this flipping stuff or whatever. I'll let them do all their flipping stuff, and when they look at me, I just punch them one time. Because if
enough of this nonsense.
If we were in a fight, a real fight out there in this parking lot this Saturday, and there's a guy that's doing all this flipping stuff, if I punch him one time, then he knows he's in a fight.
Correct.
That flipping stuff's going to stop. One or two things is going to happen. Either he's going to get knocked out or he's going to hit me back.
Right.
So I try to bring that believability back into it. And, if it's a guy that's bigger than me and he wants to hit me with a power bomb, then maybe. If I know that he can do it safely.
Yeah.
If I've never worked with the guy before, he's pretty much going to follow my lead.
Now, have you suffered any serious injuries?
I tore my, I didn't just tear my ACL, it actually imploded. The doctor that I had, which is the same doctor that works with the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte, told me that he had never seen an ACL injury like that before. My ACL blew out. Instead of just tearing and dropping in, it actually blew out. It looked like a bomb went off in the center of my knee.
What were you doing?
It was a freak accident. The guy that I was wrestling was actually a training partner of mine when I was coming up. We could have a match with our eyes closed. But what happened was the promoter, when he set his ring up, the pads that go under it, which are normally about a 1/4 inch thick, that's on top of plywood, well, they separated. It wasn't one big piece. And so when he put it together, it was like a jigsaw puzzle. But he didn't tape them. And so by the end of the night, we're main event, we're like the 8th match that's gone out, they had separated. And so I went to hit him with a suplex, just a simple suplex. And my body turned, but my knee didn't. And where my foot had gone down between the pads, my foot stayed planted, my body turned, and just blew it out. And it was the one and only time that I took an injury, and I knew what it was as soon as I landed. But the ending of the match was he was supposed to attack my leg to set up a future match. And he's like, well, what do I do? Like, well, work the leg. It's already hurt.
Right. It's already broke.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing worse that you can do to it. I'll get it checked out. But luckily with my full-time job, I had insurance.
Okay.
There's a lot of guys that they count on wrestling to put food on their table. And when they take an injury, that's a life-changing thing.
Absolutely.
So I was on the lucky end. I worked for a water utility job.
Okay.
I've had it for 11 years, and I've moved up in the company pretty well, and I had insurance, so luckily that paid for it.
And they know what you do, and they support and all that good stuff?
Well, they do. They want me to not do it because if I get hurt, then obviously I can't come into work. Right.
Right, sure.
But my supervisor knows that I do it, and he's actually came to some of the shows, and I think he realizes that, I work pretty smart, and, I'm not going out there and doing stuff that can break my back or my neck or anything like that.
I mean, there's a lot of people that have side projects because this is obviously not a hobby for you, okay? This is a passion and something that you do. But there's people, you can go out here and ride dirt bikes and four-wheelers and have an accident and really die, paralyzed, serious injury.
And see, that's what I tell guys all the time. It can't be about the money. And because like I said earlier, you got 1,000 guys trying to get 3 spots a year. It can't be all about the money because you're going to go a lot of shows not making any money to hopefully get to where you're making that $1 million a year. But the chances of you getting there are slim to none, unless you're just a freak that they see, unless you're Adam, and they're just like, hey, come with us, we'll make something out of you.
Right.
It's just not going to happen for you. Like with the dirt bikes and boating and stuff like that, you're not making money at that. You're doing it because you love it.
Right.
With the wrestling, granted, my booking fee normally is $40. Covers my gas.
Right.
So I do it because I love it. I'm not doing it to get rich because my bank teller can't tell a difference,
Right.
So.
Here's a question I've always wanted to know. How do you pick what you wear, or like what your outfit's going to be?
It's a good question. If I knew the right way to do that, I'd probably be there.
Like, how do you pick the shorts over the pants? Like,
to me, just try to make it you. Like I always tell everybody, the best gimmick in wrestling is you being yourself turned up 1,000%. I guess on the radio it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a radio personality, when you actually go on the air, you're yourself, but you turn it up a little bit. With wrestling, it's the same thing. Behind the curtain, you're yourself. When you step through that curtain, you're out in front of the fans. You've got to turn that up.
Do you think a character like Ravishing Rick Rude, could he even do what he used to do today in today's climate?
Yes, because
you think they could get away with that?
There's a guy in NXT right now that is doing that. He wrestles as Velveteen Dream, and he is this generation's Rick Rude.
Recently telling me about him.
And that was a gimmick I wanted to see come back.
Yeah.
But you got to be very secure in your manhood and being able to carry yourself if there was a legit fight to break out. Because Rick Rude, I mean, the stories are out there. Like, he was a legit tough guy. He wasn't somebody you wanted to mess with.
No.
And you've got to have that personality to where you can handle yourself in any situation. And to me, that's him. Like, he'd be able to handle himself.
Could you imagine putting someone's wife's face on spandex right on your crotch, and then standing there in front of the guy and giving them, the fat slobs, dude?
I've never been one to be scared of anybody.
Yeah.
But that's not something I would want to explain myself out of.
No. Wait a minute, which part?
That's just an awkward situation. Oh, I'm going to put your wife's face on my crotch. I hope you're cool with that. Yeah. How does that even come up in conversation?
I don't think it does. I think you have to surprise them. And you're like, is that Miss Elizabeth?
Yeah. So I did this. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
But, back then, nowadays, there's so many guys in the wrestling business that weren't properly trained. And I'm not going to bash on anybody, but you can tell in situations like that, because they're like, well, I'm not going to shoot on you, but I worked stiff.
What the hell does that mean?
Well, in wrestling, you want it to be light.
Okay.
And the whole thing is, we're supposed to, like, if me and you have a match right now, we want everybody that might be watching this to think that we're really beating the hell out of each other.
Right. Okay.
But if we're doing it right, you won't even feel me. If I throw a punch, it'll look like I ripped your head off, but you won't even feel it.
So that's what you learned from Arn Anderson, right?
Well, I actually learned that from my trainer, my original trainer, Chad Bird.
Gotcha.
But over the years of working with other people and repetition, I finally got it down. Like, I can throw a punch and it'll look like, we're actually on a legit fight, and you won't feel anything but the wind, and I just stop it right before I make contact. But it all comes from your dancing partner, your opponent. If he snaps his head at the same time that you're stopping that punch, it looks like I really made contact.
Gotcha.
And that all comes with the training and repetition on everything. But that's what I try to tell guys all the time. Strong style, like, everybody wants to go with Japan as they work stiffer and it's strong style. I can flip you over and kick you as hard as I can in the back. That doesn't prove that I'm a good wrestler. That just means I've got a decent kick when I kick you in the back, There's no such thing as working stiff, and it's called strong style. Strong style is and to Japan people, and because they buy into it.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch a Japan show and you watch a WWE show, it's two completely different things. In Japan, they very rarely clap. And if they do, it's at the end of the match. It's not during the match, because they get invested in it and they want to watch it. WWE, you'll get a chance of this is awesome, or fight forever, or whatever. It's two different cultures. With them, the strong style was actually directed to their babies, as in they never give up. Their strong style is they're going to keep wrestling, they're going to keep fighting, they're eventually going to get the win. We adapted it as, hey, I'm going to hit you as hard as I can and call it strong style. And that's not the way it should be, because that goes back to the brotherhood. To get that brotherhood, you have to show, hey, you can trust me to take care of you.
Right.
Because if we're opponents, I'm giving you my body, and I'm trusting that you're going to let me leave that ring without being hurt.
Right.
And I want you to trust the same thing. If you give me your body, I'm going to take care of you. When I'm in the ring with guys, if they ask me how I work, I just tell them, you're going to know you were in a wrestling match when we leave. I played football from the time I was 4 years old all the way up to the time that I was 26. I played semi-pro and everything. When I got done with the games, I wasn't hurt, but I was sore the next day.
Sure.
Like, you knew you had played a game. That's how my opponents normally are when they get out of the ring. If you're in the corner and I'm giving you stomps or kicks or whatever, I'm making contact, but I'm not hurting you.
I was noticing last night during Brock Lesnar's match.
Oh,
like,
God.
if you looked at him, I mean, his back was beat red all to hell from that. What's that guy's name he was wrestling? He was flying
Finn
all over.
Balor. Yeah.
Man.
I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm probably the craziest son of a bitch in the world. Because if they offer me $100 to wrestle Brock Lesnar, I'd do it right now.
Would you really?
Yeah, because thinking about the money I'm going to make afterwards, I'd go in there and get my ass kicked for 15 minutes. Well, with Brock, 5 minutes.
Man,
even.
That dude's a beast. But they call him the beast.
But look at the name, though. I mean, you get in the ring with him one time. I mean, he's a legit UFC heavyweight champion. That brought realism back to WWE. So, I mean, if you let a professional wrestler go to UFC and you don't let him come back and be rough and rugged like that, then you're killing the whole thing. So,
I was watching that guy last night, and he was literally just throwing him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure.
And he's the only person. He's the only person that Vince is ever going to let to get away with that, because he's the only one that has that mainstream following from being in the UFC. You're not going to have somebody like Kevin Owens come in and start throwing people around like that, because Vince is going to be like, "Hey, you need to work safer."
Right.
But if you have Brock go to UFC and then come back to WWE, and he's going to work, safer or less violent looking, then you're killing the whole thing.
You think the guys who like pull the card of like, all right, so you got Brock tonight, they're like, fuck. Like, oh, my hammy. My hammy.
Like, again, a few years ago, I thought Vince made the worst mistake in the world. Brock was the heavyweight champion. He dropped the belt and left to go to UFC to fight there, and I think he fought Frank Mir and won the UFC heavyweight championship. My thing as a promoter, say I was in Vince's shoes, I never would have made him drop that belt. I would have worked out a thing with Dana and been like, hey, when he walks out, he carries my championship to the octagon. And then if he wins that, he leaves the octagon with both. Because
surely they had that discussion, right?
Obviously they didn't, because he had to drop the belt before he was able to leave to go to the UFC.
Maybe that was the deal. Vince didn't want him to go.
That could be.
And Vince was like, well, if you're going to do it, you're dropping the belt. Thinking he would be like, well.
But why would you do that?
Well, I mean, I don't know.
I would have done a contract extension that's been like, hey, go do this, do both. I mean, obviously he's not on WWE every week. So,
no,
I mean, he's an attraction now,
He's under contract for a pretty significant amount of money every year, right?
Oh, yeah. And has less dates than everybody else. But and everybody, like, I get online, even last night, they're like, well, we won't see Brock again for another 6 months. You don't have to.
Yeah.
He's an attraction. If he's on the card, that place is packed out, guaranteed, because they don't see him all the time. You ever saturate somebody, why are they going to come watch it?
That's true.
If they can see him every Monday night on Raw, then what's going to make them come to the pay-per-view?
That's right. You give too much of a good thing, people don't want it anymore. So you got to make them want it.
But you got fans that want to think that they're smart, and they're like, oh, well, he shouldn't be the champion because you only see him, 3 times a year. Well, you might be fussing about it, but the next time he's on a pay-per-view, you're either buying it or you're going.
So Brock and Adam or Braun Strowman, they've wrestled once.
I think they've wrestled a few times.
A few times,
yeah. And I think they've only had one-on-one match. They've been in the ring a few times, and that's actually a funny story. I think it was their second time. I want to say it was a triple threat match. It was Roman and Braun and Brock, and Braun was caught up in the moment, and you could tell. And he was going too fast, and when he threw a knee, he hit Brock in the face with a knee. And so Brock stood up and tagged him
Did
twice.
He really?
I mean, just legit. I mean, he was throwing punches, and he hit Adam twice. And on national television, on pay-per-view, you hear him say, "Slow the fuck down."
Oh, that's what Brock said?
Yeah, to Braun. And I'm sitting there like, if he would have hit me like that, you'd have been scraping me up off the mat. There's no way. Like,
you'd have saw my face crumble into his fist.
Yeah, like I've never been scared of anybody, but I'm also not stupid. There's no way I'm gonna stand there and take a legit punch from Brock Lesnar and just be like, oh yeah, that was a pretty good shot there.
Could you imagine if those two really went at it?
Yeah, I'd be like in the ICU.
But those two big bastards went at it. Man, they would tear a place apart.
Oh yeah, and
God,
and that's the thing. They're both attractions. You put them in the ring against each other, people are going to naturally watch because they're so big. And the believability factors there.
Yes.
That goes back to the whole thing. You've got to be able to put something on the marquee or on a poster that make people believe, hey, I know it's fake. I know all this stuff's worked out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't call it fake because what we do, everything that we do in that ring can paralyze us.
Absolutely. That was something I was going to say earlier. I think people should stop saying the word fake.
I do too.
Can you say that the ending has already been
predetermined?
Sure.
That's what I say. Wrestling's predetermined. It's not fake.
No.
There's from the you never know what's going to happen. I mean, a freak accident blew my ACL out.
Right.
I mean, you take a suplex and lay it on your neck, you can break your neck, and then you're quadriplegic for the rest of your life.
Right. That shit ain't fake.
I mean, Darren Drozdoff would tell everybody every day that wrestling's not fake. I mean, something like that happens, it changes your life, not for a couple of days, but for the rest of your life. There's no going back. But I hate it when people say it's fake because the years of training that we go through.
Sure.
Granted, they call it a bump when you fall on the ring. You're landing on solid steel that has 2x4s laid over top of it, and then you have 1/4-inch padding. Which the only reason why the padding's there is when they lay the canvas over it, you don't see the ripples in the boards.
Really?
When you lay the canvas over top of that padding, the whole idea is when they pull it tight, you don't see the ripples of the boards. It's 1/4-inch padding. So when you fall on it, you're taught how to fall, so your whole body absorbs that impact. And it hurts like hell the first 500 times you do it.
I actually set up one in junior high school. They had a wrestling event at our high school gym, and they got us out of class to help them set it up.
Really?
And we got up on it, and I thought it was going to be like a trampoline.
Yeah, everybody does.
No,
everybody
like
does.
A trampoline. It hurts when you hit it. Yeah.
I say I was taught in the very beginning. You want to bump in the middle of the ring because that's where you have the most absorption and spring. Now there's guys all the time taking bumps on the apron and stuff. That's the hardest part of the ring. That's solid steel that's holding the boards, and then 1/4-inch padding's not going to absorb anything. But that's years of practice and training that we're doing.
You're talking about tens of thousands of falls.
And people want to say that it's fake because they watch it on Monday and Tuesday nights and, they're doing these matches and stuff. And they think that's all they do until there's a pay-per-view. They don't realize that on Monday, they probably already had 2 shows before they're watching it live, house shows. And on Tuesdays, a lot of times that's tape. So on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they're in other cities all across the United States doing house shows where they're taking the same bumps, doing the same matches. The guys now, when they sign a contract to work for WWE, they're on the road 300 days a year.
That is insane.
That's 65 days, if they're lucky, with their family. And out of those 300 days, they're working. They're doing matches. They're taking those bumps. And to me, the most disrespectful thing you can tell them is that it's fake.
That is fake.
Right. They're missing their kids growing up.
Absolutely.
And then you're going to tell them what they're doing is fake. But you never hear anybody call Vin Diesel out saying, "Hey, that movie you made was fake."
That's a good point. No, you don't.
Right.
I
mean, if you really look at it, everything that everybody does is fake.
Absolutely.
So
that's a good point.
I don't really get mad about it. I know some people get hot about it because they've invested their whole life into it. Mm-hmm. I haven't invested my whole life into it, so I really don't have I guess technically I haven't made it to the show, so I don't really have a dog in the fight. But I'm out there taking the same bumps that those guys have. The only difference is they got noticed and I haven't yet.
Right.
So
yet, my friend, yet. But isn't it cool though? People who kind of poo-poo all over wrestling. The biggest superstar in the world right now, the biggest money drawer, paid actor in the world is The Rock.
Oh, yeah. And deserves it.
Yeah, he deserves it. That dude's dedication and what he does, the way he trains, is out of this world. Yeah, and the dedication. Get out of here.
You can't argue it. He's the hardest working man in the world.
In the room.
Yeah.
In any room.
Yeah. Anywhere you put him anywhere in the world, and he's going to outwork everybody.
Yep. And that ain't fake.
Yeah. I mean, he deserves everything he's got because he's worked for it. I mean, you can't say that anything was ever given to him.
No.
I mean, I've read his book before, and his first day in the WWE, he had like $13 in his wallet. That's all he had. You know, everybody's like, well, he had a family name, so he didn't have anything to worry about. His family name was, you know, a generation before him.
Right.
His family wasn't around when he was coming into the business. You know, their money was tied up in other things. He didn't come in spoon fed.
Right.
He had to fight for everything he had. Granted, he might have had help getting in the door.
Sure, that's okay.
But everything he did from that point, I mean, he was at the time, he was the youngest world champion that Vince had. At 26 years old, he had already been fired and brought back and was made a world champion.
See, I didn't know that part.
I mean, he earned everything.
Damn.
And then everybody wants to put down Charlotte Flair, talking about, you know, she's royalty, you know, it's because of her dad, she's where she's at. Her dad didn't take those bumps for her. No. Her dad didn't go through all the training for her. You know, he did it for him.
Sure.
But with her coming into the business, she had to do it.
But if she wasn't worth the shit, she wouldn't be up there anyway.
That's right.
Right? If
That's
she
right.
if she wasn't talented,
I don't care.
Sell it.
Yeah, I don't care what name is your last name. If you can't do it, Vince isn't going to keep you. I really shouldn't say that because Tamina's still there. But Jimmy Snuka's daughter, she has less than zero charisma, but it's just, I don't know. You know, some people flip a switch. I don't know if she's ever found her switch, but
there is. I don't know who that is. I remember Jimmy
there's a reason. If you don't remember his daughter, there's a reason for it because she doesn't stand out to anybody. But I think the point is she's been there for so long now.
Yeah.
I think they're just letting her ride out her career, which I'd say she's probably not making a whole lot anyway. You know, she just doesn't know anything else. Right. You know, at her age, if she goes off somewhere else, then what's she going to do?
There is, I've got a couple good buddies who are huge wrestling fans. And one of them was on the show about a month ago, Jeremy Coffey, and he runs an organization called Good Souls. But his dad used to be the announcer at the Armory for the wrestling matches when they would come in.
Wow.
So I was telling them, and I might have even mentioned it to you, but I want to get him and a couple other guys here and do like an old school wrestling show for more you guys talk about stories and, you know, whatnot.
I would love that. I would love to pick his brain and hear some of his stories. You know, if he was back before my time in the business, I would love to hear those stories.
But here's the caveat: you either have to come as Adam James, or you have to dress up as your favorite wrestler. So the other two guys are going to come, or maybe three, are going to come as their favorite wrestlers.
Wow. I actually did that. I dressed up as my favorite wrestler one time at a show. I did a tribute show to Hulk from LOD. Really? And Animal found out about it a couple of months later. And when I met him at a show, he said, "Aren't you the one that came out with your face painted?"
Did you shave your head and everything?
I did. I had the twin mohawks.
Yes.
I had the face paint.
I love those guys.
Took some old shoulder pads and made them into the LOD shoulder pads and everything. And true story. I'll try and shorten it. When I was 5, I broke my femur bone in my right leg, and so I was in a body cast for a year and 6 months because they had to re-break it and everything because it wasn't healing back right. So imagine me at 6 years old, and I have a cast around my waist going down all the way down my right leg and around my left hip, and I have a trap door so I can use the bathroom.
Right.
Well, my dad took me to the Roanoke Civic Center to a WCW taping, and on that card, you know, we got there early. Dad had paid extra money for the pass to get in and meet some of the wrestlers. I got my picture taken with Hulk and Animal, and Hulk picked me up on his shoulders, and Animal took his shoulder pads and put them on me, and Brian Pillman and Steen both got into the picture. So fast forward to this, I do the tribute to Hulk and everything, and he asked me, he was like, "Weren't you the wrestler that did that tribute to Hulk?" But yeah, you know, I'm afraid he's going to get upset. Like maybe I did, you know, maybe he's going to think I was stealing their gimmick or whatever. And he put his hand out and shook my hand. And I was like, you know, thank you for understanding. He said, "Hey, anybody that's going to, you know, do that for Hulk, I'm all for it." You know, Hulk was a great guy. He was telling me stories and stuff. So I tell him about the story of them picking me up when I was 6. And he said, "I ought to smack you." "What do you mean?" He said, "You just made me feel old." And anyway, we go talking and stuff, and he said that he remembered me. I said, "Whatever." I was like, "Whatever. You know, you've done 1.5 million shows since that point. There's no way you remember me." He said, "No, I do remember you." And I was like, "Man, you don't have to lie to make me feel good." He said, "We only did that with 2 kids." He said, "Kids that were hurt or something like that. We only did that with 2 kids." He said, "I remember you."
How cool is that?
I was like, all right, you just made my day. I could never wrestle again, and that made my day.
Man, the Road Warriors, man, they were awesome. What an iconic tag team, man. Mm-hmm. And then coming into Iron Man.
I cried over 2 wrestlers dying my whole life, and that was Hulk and Dusty Rhodes. When I heard about those two, and granted, like I never had dinner with them, I never hung out with them on the weekends. Sure. Like I didn't know them as people, but growing up with them, and to me, I loved them. Heroes, I loved them so much. I felt like they were part of my family. Oh, yeah. The American Dream and LOD. There's no way you could beat either one of them.
That's right.
And when each one of them passed away, I mean, it hurt. Because it felt like, hey, that's my childhood that's gone away.
That's now. A piece of your childhood.
Just like when Animal passes away, I'm sure it'll be the same thing. Mm-hmm. And, Ric Flair, when he passes away, it'll be the same. Arn will be even worse, because you get invested in these people as you grow up and you live through them. And so when they pass away, it's almost like, man, that shouldn't have happened.
Right. Well, I mean, they've been heroes for so long.
Right.
And heroes don't die.
Well, as long as they're in memories. And now on the network, I mean, you can go back and watch them and see the stuff that they did at any time. So.
Well, man, do you want to plug the event coming up this weekend one more time? Let everybody know to come out.
This Saturday, February 2nd, at the I-40 Flea Market over on Wilkesboro Highway at 2 p.m., where NAWA will be holding its first Statesville show. And bell time's at 2 o'clock, free admission, just asking for a donation.
And is it rain or shine?
Well, we're hoping for good weather because we are going to have the ring set up. But if it gets rained out and Julius is, gracious enough, we'll try and do the matches on another weekend. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, but I heard 55 Saturday actually.
That's great.
Yeah, I've heard everything that I've been looking at. It seems like it's going to be good. But something happens, freak storm comes in or something like that. We'll still have stuff to do out there. We're not, obviously, if people are coming out for that, we're not just going to be like, sorry, we can't do anything.
Right.
It's for a good cause. We're going to try and raise as much money as that we can for my parents. So we'll do something, even if it's just a meet and greet with the wrestlers, talk about old stories, And
the Boogie Woogie Man's going to be here.
Yes. And George South may be here too.
Okay.
So, and then we're hoping for a couple other guest appearances too.
Well, I hope a lot of people come out. I hope a lot of people show support. And all the best to you and to your mom, and I hope everything works out well for her.
Thank you.
And she continues to recover. And I want to thank you for coming on. I'd love to have you back sometime.
Oh, anytime. So, I live literally 2 minutes from here, okay. So I like this. So I could, if y'all have me.
Oh, we'll have you back for sure.
I'm more than.
And we'll have the other guys come in, and we'll figure something out because I think it'll be a fun time.
Oh yeah.
But again, thanks, Julius. Thanks for the States Vegas Radio, States Vegas Clothing Company, Hunk and Junk Calling for all your support. And we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks again, man.
Appreciate
it.